There are tragedies that don't end even when the trial is over. In the narrow hallway of the Countess of Chester Hospital, three men in dark suits walked out, their hands quietly cuffed. The yellow ceiling lights shone down on faded directional signs, bearing the marks of time. They had just been arrested on charges of gross negligent manslaughter, offenses that could lead to unprecedented sentences in the history of British healthcare. This place was once known as the most advanced neonatal care unit in the region, where hundreds of families placed their absolute trust. But only a few years ago, that trust was shattered when the name Lucy Letby appeared on the front page of every newspaper. The young nurse, her gentle face behind glasses, was convicted of murdering 7 newborns and attempting to murder 7 others in silence. Throughout the many months of trial, hospital leaders were questioned about their responsibility. Records documented doctors' warnings and detailed reports of unusual infant deaths. But instead of pursuing a thorough investigation, they were accused of sweeping aside all suspicions, prioritizing the hospital's reputation over the truth. On the day the steel door closed behind them, the public was once again stunned. Because if those with the highest authority had chosen to look away, a larger question emerged. Where is the line between error, fear, and complicity? Did this crime stem solely from one person's inhumanity, or was it nurtured by an entire system that never intended to confront the consequences of its own actions? If you were the one standing in that room between urgent warnings and the pressure to protect an institution's image, what would you have done? And when everything collapses, who truly bears the responsibility? The Countess of Chester Hospital sits in the middle of a quiet residential area where a brick-paved path leads straight into the main lobby with its wide glass wall. This place was once a source of pride for the community. Recognized as a high-quality medical center, the hospital stood out for its advanced neonatal care technology. The working atmosphere at the Countess of Chester reflected a spirit of family. The team of doctors and nurses worked tirelessly to save every newborn. They were closely connected, supporting each other through long shifts. They shared the joy when a child was discharged healthy and the sorrow when a life could not be saved. This unity, combined with the trust of countless families, built the hospital's strong reputation. In such an environment, nurses like Lucy Letby were carefully selected for both their skills and their attitude. Lucy Letby was born on January 4th, 1990, in Hereford, England, the only child of John Letby, a furniture salesman, and Susan Letby, an accountant. She grew up in a middle-class family in a terraced house in Hereford, with a childhood described as normal, with no signs of instability or abuse. A high school friend told the BBC that Letby wanted to become a neonatal nurse because she herself had survived a difficult birth and felt grateful to the nurses who had saved her. This inspiration shaped her educational path and career. Letby studied at Hereford's Sixth Form College. There, she was remembered as a diligent, quiet student who loved science and biology. She also had a passion for animals, once raising a rabbit named Flopsy and volunteering at an animal rescue center. Letby was the first in her family to attend university, making her mark by choosing nursing at the University of Chester in 2008. During her 3 years at Chester, Letby combined theoretical studies with hands-on practice as a student nurse at Liverpool Women's Hospital and the Countess of Chester Hospital. She completed her nursing degree in September 2011, despite struggling when she failed her final placement. After requesting a change of assessor, she passed a supplementary placement. In 2013, she completed an advanced neonatal care course, and by 2014, she was fully qualified to work. During this time, she was well liked by colleagues for her dedication and professional attitude. In 2012, Letby officially became a registered nurse in the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital. With her blonde hair and gentle smile, she earned the trust of both colleagues and parents. Letby was frequently praised for her soft approach to caring for newborns and her patience in difficult cases. The hospital operated under strict procedures. Every decision, from medication dosages to staffing schedules, was closely monitored. Staff respected their superiors and followed directives without question. The pressure to maintain the hospital's exemplary reputation was constant. Any mistake could damage its standing, making management especially sensitive to unusual reports. That same discipline would one day cause them to overlook small changes in patient charts. The physical space of the hospital further reinforced the sense of safety. The neonatal ward's hallways were bright and clean, with soft light streaming in from large windows. The steady beeping of monitors blended with the quiet footsteps of nurses. The special care rooms were neatly arranged, with incubators lined up, each one a small world protecting fragile newborns. This was the place where everyone believed medical miracles happened, where the weakest babies were given a chance to live. The hospital's management once proudly declared the facility a model of procedural control and collaboration among departments. Everything operated so smoothly, so predictably, that it was easy to forget that behind those glass walls, the fragility of life was always present. In that long stretch of calm, there were numbers slowly becoming signs of a tragedy. And it was precisely that atmosphere of absolute trust that would become the wall blocking every essential question. Who would have the courage to speak up when everything seemed to be working perfectly? The medical team at the Countess of Chester Hospital worked under immense pressure. Every day they faced the task of saving newborns, some weighing only a few hundred grams, with heartbeats as fragile as a thread. A small mistake could lead to tragedy, not only claiming a life, but also threatening the hospital's reputation, built over years as a trusted medical center. The long night shifts, sometimes lasting 12 hours without rest, left nurses and doctors exhausted. The weight of responsibility pressed down on them, from monitoring each baby's breath-in G to recording detailed reports for their superiors. In the family atmosphere of the neonatal unit, unity was essential. Asking questions or doubting a colleague could easily be seen as disruptive, causing many to remain silent, even when they sensed something was wrong. At that time, Lucy Letby was still trusted. She worked tirelessly. Many colleagues recalled the image of Letby sitting beside an incubator, her hand resting on a swaddled newborn, whispering a few harmless words of comfort. That calm presence made her an invisible support for many families panicking as their babies deteriorated. Letby was often the last person to leave the care room, staying behind to make sure everything was in order before handing over her shift. She patiently handled each case, from premature babies weighing only a few hundred grams to those needing close monitoring. She meticulously checked incubators, adjusted equipment, and recorded details without a word of complaint. For the hospital leadership, every report of a death came with the pressure to preserve the institution's intact image. They had to balance the responsibility of reviewing procedures with the fear that reacting too strongly could erode the community's trust that had been built over decades. On the managers' desks, thin folders gradually turned into thick stacks of papers, but everyone only knew how to try to resolve the matter as quickly as possible. And then there were the parents, the ones who had trusted completely. They handed their children over to the medical team, believing that every effort to save them would be carried out with the utmost care. To them, this hospital was the last place where hope could exist. Among all these people, it was clear that no one wanted to believe there was anything worse than the natural risks of fate or a dark scenario they couldn't imagine. And when a child died, most could only ask themselves, what did I do wrong? What did I fail to notice? But if one day that familiarity and absolute trust were the very reasons every suspicion was buried, would anyone have the courage to look straight at the question, should we have been able to stop this from happening? At first, the numbers appeared only as minor fluctuations in the statistics. A few doctors noticed that the rate of newborn deaths and severe complications was significantly higher than in previous periods. Each case was explained by existing risk factors: extremely premature births, high rates of complications, or unstable maternal health. However, as the reports gradually piled up, the atmosphere in the morning meetings began to change. The lead doctor opened the files and raised the question: how many cases do we have in total this quarter? Everyone fell silent, and people began to pay attention to mistakes that had occurred in the nurse's care. In July 2013, Lucy Letby, who was then a young nurse in the neonatal unit, along with a more senior nurse, made a serious error, setting the morphine infusion rate 10 times higher than the correct dosage. The incident, discovered an hour after the shift handover, fortunately did not harm the baby, but was described as very serious by Yvonne Farmer, the practice development nurse in the unit. The deputy head of the unit immediately suspended Letby from handling controlled medications and required her to attend additional training on dosage calculations. Letby appeared upset about this decision and filed a complaint with the unit head. Just 1 week later, Powell lifted the suspension, allowing Letby to resume working with medications like morphine. Letby texted a colleague saying that Powell believed the incident had been blown out of proportion and that she just needed to learn to live with it to regain her confidence. In 2015, Letby completed advanced training and became qualified to work with newborns in the special care unit. However, in April 2016, she made another mistake when she independently administered antibiotics that had not been prescribed to a newborn. Letby considered this a minor error and unavoidable due to work pressure and staff shortages, but Farmer assessed it as a serious, potentially major error. In her report, Letby wrote that she and a colleague immediately noticed the mistake, informed a doctor, and ensured the baby was monitored, with no harm caused. By June 2016, when the rate of unusual deaths in the neonatal unit surged, lead neonatologist Stephen Brewery requested that management remove Letby from clinical duties for investigation. Earlier, in June 2015, Brewery and Unit Director Arian Powell had reviewed 4 cases of unexplained collapses, 3 of which resulted in death, and noticed that Letby had been present in all of them. Initially, they believed this was coincidental, but suspicion gradually grew. Letby was transferred to the patient experience team in July 2016 and later worked in the risk and patient safety office until she was arrested in 2018. These events exposed gaps in management and oversight at the Countess of Chester. The morphine error in 2013 and the antibiotic error in 2016 were not thoroughly investigated, and the early lifting of her suspension reflected the leadership's lack of decisiveness. If an early warning had been heard, would the outcome have been different? When the truth came to light, the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital sank into a nightmare. When the internal investigation and official warnings identified Lucy Letby as the primary suspect in the deaths, the medical staff were shocked. The young nurse, always regarded as dedicated and trustworthy, was now suspected of being the cause behind the mysterious deaths. How could someone like that harm the most fragile babies? Facing the accusations, Letby maintained a calm, almost cold demeanor. She denied any wrongdoing, insisting on her innocence. Messages she sent to colleagues after being suspended showed that she saw the accusations as excessive and unfair. In her personal notes, she wrote puzzling lines like, "I did nothing wrong, and why me?" which left those who read them unsettled. Her lack of remorse only deepened the suspicion and pain among the medical team. The mutual trust between nurses and doctors collapsed. Every glance was filled with doubt. Hospital leadership faced accusations that they had concealed the problems for too long, especially since unusual warning signs had appeared as early as 2015. The Countess of Chester's reputation crumbled, leaving behind a neonatal unit haunted by what had happened, where trust, once the foundation, was now nothing but ashes. The trial of Lucy Letby began on October 10th, 2022, at Manchester Crown Court, presided over by Judge James Goss. Although she faced up to 17 charges, she firmly denied them all. The prosecution focused on indirect and medical evidence, as there were no direct witnesses or camera footage capturing the crimes. They presented that Letby had used various methods to attack the newborns, including injecting air into veins to cause air embolisms, poisoning with insulin, forcing milk through nasal tubes, or inflicting physical injuries. Although the defense argued that the medical evidence was unconvincing and biased by media coverage, all arguments were rejected. The trial adopted strict security measures rarely seen outside national security cases. Judge Stein banned the publication of the identities of the 17 babies and 9 colleague witnesses to protect their privacy and ensure testimony would not be influenced. After more than 110 hours of deliberation, on August 18, 2023, the jury found Letby guilty of 7 counts of murder and 6 counts of attempted murder, not guilty on 2 counts of attempted murder, and unable to reach verdicts on 6 other counts of attempted murder. She was sentenced to 14 life sentences without parole. But if everything had been scrutinized more carefully, would Lucy have had so much time to carry out these crimes? And the investigation continues to this day. On June 30th, 2025, 3 former senior leaders of the Countess of Chester Hospital were arrested by police on charges of gross negligent manslaughter. These individuals, who were part of the hospital's leadership team during 2015 to 2016, were suspected of failing to act promptly on warnings about the unusually high death rates in the neonatal unit where Lucy Letby had worked. After being questioned, all 3 were released on bail, pending further investigation, and their identities were not disclosed in accordance with police procedure. Meanwhile, the neonatal unit was required to operate under special supervision, with emergency reporting protocols put in place. Detective Paul Hughes, who is leading the investigation, emphasized that these charges do not affect Letby's convictions. The allegations focus on 3 main issues: ignoring doctors' warnings. Beginning in the summer of 2015, doctors, including lead neonatologist Stephen Breary, raised concerns about the unusually high death rates in the neonatal unit. Breary noticed that Letby was present during most of the collapses or deaths, but hospital leadership remained indifferent. A 2018 report by Faishere Melius criticized the leaders for being inexperienced and for missing 14 opportunities to suspend Letby, instead attributing the deaths to management issues or delayed interventions. Forcing doctors to apologize instead of taking action, the hospital leadership, including Chief Executive Tony Chambers and Medical Director Ian Harvey, were accused of pressuring doctors. In January 2017, Chambers summoned 7 consultant doctors to a meeting, demanding that they apologize to Letby and stop accusing her. He also warned that there would be consequences if they continued, according to Breary. Some doctors were forced to participate in mediation sessions with Letby, even though they firmly maintained their concerns. This action was described by the lawyer representing the victims' families as a cover-up to protect the hospital's reputation. Concealing the risk, internal reports and the Thirlwall inquiry, expected to release findings in 2026, indicated that hospital leadership prioritized protecting the hospital's image over investigating. The deaths were not reported properly, preventing the NHS system from detecting the unusually high mortality rate in time. Instead of contacting the police early, the hospital conducted ineffective internal inquiries, delaying action until May 2017, when the police formally became involved. Doctors like Breary felt bullied and isolated when they tried to speak up. The community and victims' families were shocked when they learned about the leadership's delays. Families who had once placed absolute trust in the hospital felt betrayed. On social media platform X, public opinion was divided. Some supported investigating the leadership, calling it a step toward justice. Others worried it would further complicate the debate over Letby's conviction, as she is appealing to the Criminal Cases Review Commission. Gross negligent manslaughter can lead to life imprisonment, unlike corporate manslaughter, which only results in financial penalties for the organization. The leaders were accused of failing in their duty of care toward the newborns, effectively allowing Letby to continue causing harm. The investigation is still ongoing and is also reviewing non-fatal collapses at the hospital from 2012 to 2016. There is no specific timeline for results, but the case has raised serious questions about responsibility and the culture of management within the NHS. While the investigation remains unfinished, who can say with certainty that the whole truth will ever be fully revealed? The Lucy Letby case, with 15 life sentences without parole handed down in 2023 and 2024, is not just the story of a killer nurse, but a profound fracture in people's trust in what is considered sacred: life, faith, and the mission of medicine. The hospital, once a symbol of salvation, became the scene of a crime. Letby, a nurse trained to protect the most fragile infants, was convicted of taking their lives. This act not only violated the Hippocratic Oath, but also shattered the ethical foundation of the medical profession, putting patients first. The victims' families, who had placed their children in Letby's care with hope, now face a painful question. How can you trust the healthcare system when the healer becomes the one who harms? The case poses an unsolvable ethical dilemma. Can kindness be a cover for evil, and how can it be recognized before it is too late? The case shook England's National Health Service, NHS. The reputation of the Countess of Chester Hospital collapsed, fueling widespread doubt about the competence of management and oversight in healthcare institutions. The recent arrests of 3 senior leaders further exposed the system's failures. They prioritize the hospital's image over patient safety. Society asks, if even those at the top put the interests of the organization above human life, who will protect the most vulnerable? On social platform X, the public is divided between outrage toward Letby and suspicions of a miscarriage of justice, sparking debates about collective and individual accountability in public institutions. The case touches on humanity's primal fear: the unease of not being able to tell good from evil. Letby, with her image of a dedicated, gentle nurse, was painted by the court's verdict as a cold-blooded murderer. Nurses and doctors at the Countess of Chester live with lingering guilt, wondering whether they missed any warning signs. The victims' families carry a double burden: the loss of their children and the feeling of betrayal by the very person they trusted. The case raises a deep psychological question. What makes an ordinary person turn into a monster? And can evil hide inside anyone? And when trust is broken, where do people begin to rebuild? The answer belongs to each of us. This is Case X. All perspectives deserve to be heard. A case that asks questions about trust, courage, and responsibility. If it were you, would you have the courage to speak up?